Hey, welcome back. Today at Long Bottom Farm, we're going to talk about do's and don'ts with baby chicks. Meaning when you get them to the farm, there's a couple big things you want to do, there's a couple big things you don't want to do. Before we get to that, we're going to talk about how farmers love to hang on to stuff. We're going to haul some stuff to the dump, and that might be sacrilege to some, but also there comes a point where I think we got to have a talk about it. Then we're also going to set the brooder up. We're going to show you how we set the brooder up for baby chicks. And then we'll talk about, again, do's and don'ts of baby chicks. So without further delay, let's get some of these chores done around the farm here and we'll get into it. So we've already done feeding the cattle and the chickens, and now I've got this big pile behind me that needs to go to the dump. Now I know the first thing you're saying, man, why are you throwing away that freezer? Hey, that's part of an IBC tote back there. Why are you getting rid of that? Partly because it's springtime. We've got this pole barn you can see behind me, and this is kind of our main storage on the farm. Definitely need more, but I think all farmers need more storage. I don't think there's just not enough. A week or so ago, we cleaned out this pole barn just to make room to try to get more hay equipment in here, just to get more things that really need to be under cover. And in doing that, we just found some things that have been in there that just haven't been used since we moved here. We've had this freezer right here. We initially used it and then it went bad. My brother works on these things and he said probably either needs Freon or it's just going to cost more than what it's going to be to get it going. So we were initially using it for feed storage, but now we're getting half-ton totes and it's just been taking up space and it just needs to go. I've checked with a few other farmer friends, see if they may want to take it, and they don't want it. So it's got to go. So it's going to the dump. And then this IBC tote back here, we've used it as a little house. It's got a big hole cut in it that we were using for piglets when we were doing 2 or 3 at a time. And we've just grown from there, and it just really doesn't have a purpose. It's big, it's bulky, and it just needs to go. Some old lumber, and this is lumber that's just rotting. I've come to find that I hold on to a lot of my lumber. We've got a ton in the barn that I saved. But some of this lumber, I know that if I use it, I'm going to be replacing it a year or 2 from now, or it's going to fail in what I want it to do.
It's a scary nightmare hoarder nest.
At the same time, you know, it's just, 1, to make room for other stuff, 2, just for some mental real estate clearance. Just, it gets to a point where you've got so much stuff and you don't know what you have, what you're using it for, and it just got to go. So for peace of mind, for space, and just to get the farm looking a little nicer, we're going to get this stuff to the dump. Then after that, we'll start setting up our brooder, and I'll show you how we do that. Well guys, that about fills that load up. Tried to get the tote on there, but that ain't fitting. So we're gonna run these up, we'll do 1 more load, and then we'll get into setting up the brooder.
Now that Dad is done with chores, let's talk about the do's and don'ts of brooding baby chicks. So the brooder is behind me. Let's go inside and see the baby chicks.
All right, so now that we've got all the other stuff done, we're going to talk about some do's and don'ts of brooding baby chicks. As you can see, we're in the brooder with the baby chicks. They're about 1.5 weeks old now, so they're past that really vulnerable stage. Again, there's still some things you can mess up, but at this stage, they're pretty healthy and they're doing well. We got 110 birds, and I think we lost 4 out of the batch, which is, you don't want to lose any, but around, I think, a 3% ratio, a 3% loss is normal. So all in all, we're doing very well. Chicks are growing good, they're very happy, and we're gonna talk about some do's and don'ts. So first, do call the post office. If you're ordering chicks through the mail, go ahead and call the post office and let them know that you have chicks coming. This way they'll be prepared for it, and they're prepared anyway, but it's kind of a courtesy. So I would recommend giving the post office a call and just letting them know, sort of a heads up, hey, the week of such and such, I'm expecting some baby chicks. Just give me a call when they get there and we'll come down and pick them up. Do pick up the chicks as soon as they arrive. Again, most post offices are great about leaving the chicks in a warm spot. Just make sure to go down there as soon as they call or as quick as you can and get your chicks from the post office so you can get them into their warm brooder. Bring a warm vehicle for transportation. Again, we put them in the cab up with us and we have the heat cranked up, and that way it's nice and warm. We have about a 10-minute drive from our post office, so it's not too bad. Now for some don'ts, don't put the birds under your heater in your vehicle. Again, that's air blowing on them, and even though it's hot, it's still not good. So just put them in a back seat or a floorboard where they don't have airflow blowing on them. and just try to have the cab itself nice and warm. I recommend don't open your box at the post office. Again, get home, get in your brooder, and then open. That just causes undue stress in an environment where it could be cold, it could be windy. They're definitely not under heat lamps, so I recommend I just leave the box shut. I pick up the boxes, get them home as quick as I can. Then when I get home, I open them up. If you have a ton of losses and you open up when they get home, most reputable hatcheries are going to replace your birds. So again, I don't think it's something you need to do at the post office. Just open them up when you get home, check them, take pictures if you need to when you get home, but that's how we do it. Do have your brooder set up before your chicks arrive. You don't want to go pick your chicks up from the post office and then have them sitting around while you're getting your chips down, your lights on, your water feeder set up. Go ahead and have all that done before, and your chicks will be a lot better for it. You good?
Yeah, just make sure that one doesn't jump
No, you won't.
out.
Do make sure that your brooder's safe, that there's no super sharp edges, that if you put it together like this, you see behind me, or that we're in, that there's not any nails sticking out from the sides. Again, these little birds run around 100 miles an hour when they're feeling good, and sharp edges, things like that, can actually injure them. So kind of common sense, but just if you're building something like this, just make sure there's no sharp edges or anything on the inside. Do go ahead and have your starter chick feed ready to go. And by starter, there's grower, there's layer feed. You want to make sure you've got good starter feed. It has higher protein and it's just made for baby birds to get them off to a good start. Also, we go ahead and have those setting right by the waters and ready to go when we put the birds in. That way it's just all set up. The feed's been in this warm environment prior to putting your birds in the brooder. And Finn, what about temp?
Be sure that your brooder is nice and warm when you put your birds in, or else they will get cold shock and sometimes they can die.
Yes, you definitely want, we typically go between 95 and 100 to start them off on. And then some people will raise their lights up every week. Some people, everybody does different things. We just watch the birds. If they're all huddled under the lights, that means they're probably too cold. If they're all on the outside of the lights, it means probably your light's too low and they're too warm. So just look at your birds. They'll tell you what you need to do. Again, you can put a thermometer on the ground and that'll also give you a good idea. We like to have it laying right on the ground at their level under the lights, and that gives us a good idea of what the temperature is going to be. Also for warmth, you see these heat lamps we have here? We have 4 of these in here. And I like to have a number of heat lamps just because if one light goes out, I've got backups. Also, I can adjust. I can keep one a little lower, raise one a little higher, and kind of see what they're liking. That also is a way to get feedback from the birds to tell me what I need to do. All right, and going back to having your feed and stuff ready,
be sure to have your water fresh and clean before your chicks go into the brooder.
Very important. You definitely want to have clean water with any of your animals, but it goes without saying, definitely with baby chicks. And another thing, some people will dip beaks of the chicks into the water when they first arrive. We do that. I don't know that you have to do that. I've just, from farmers that I've learned from and watched, they say it's always a good idea. If they've been on a trip for 2 or 3 days, they're probably going to need water. The question is whether you need to dip their beaks in or they'll find it on their own. Again, we do dip their beaks. I think that's up to you on whether you want to do that or not. Main thing is make sure they can find the water and then it's accessible. That's the main thing.
So do not overcrowd the brooder, because if you have too many birds, then they might not have enough space.
That's true. You want to make sure you've got enough space for all your birds to roam around. Having enough adequate space means that they can grow as they need to over the next 3 weeks while they're in your brooder, and that they're not getting, if they're too compact, it's too much manure, it's not good for the birds. So make sure you have enough space for them to roam around, and that'll get them off to a good start.
Do check your chicks several times a day.
Yes, that's very important, especially in the first week. You just want to make sure that all the systems that you set up are functioning like they should. You may have set up food, you may have set up water, but you want to make sure you're checking, make sure you can see them drinking, you can see them eating, and that everything's set up appropriately. Again, we've had set up waters before and the waters were actually not stopping and they were overflowing. We've set up certain feeders that we found out were too big or up too high for the birds and we had to drop them down. And these are things that we had everything set up, but we wouldn't know unless we were checking on them multiple times a day. Especially the first week, check on them a couple times or several times a day just to make sure that all of your systems are in place and are working properly. Don't assume that everything's working properly, because when you do that, that's when something's going to happen. I'm more always on the paranoid side, so just check a number of times a day and don't neglect to do that, especially the first week.
Also, checking on them several times a day is a good way to monitor their health.
Exactly. That's something, again, you especially want to do the first week or so. Well, I mean, throughout their life, but specifically the first week. I feel like that's the vulnerable point for them. And just make sure their health is good. You know, if you see some birds that aren't looking great, you may want to quarantine those and put them in a separate area. Some of them just need heat and water, and they just haven't been able to find it, so you get them that nutrition and they're doing good. So just again, keep an eye, close eye on them the first week and make sure they're doing everything appropriately. Anything else to add, ladies? No? All right. You think we're ready? And if you guys want to learn our complete system for brooding chicks, then